K'Sante has finally been revealed, and with him, Riot may have delivered us some new intel about their upcoming MMO. K'Sante, the new lead character, is a warrior from Nazumah. A formidable monster hunter, K'Sante uses his twin weapons, the Natofos, to take down and slay anything that may pose a threat to Nazumah, his home. The Natofos are an ode to K'Sante's sheer strength and power, but also a reminder of K'Sante's past and the troubles that he had to overcome in order to become the man he is today. Growing up, K'Sante was surrounded by the tales of his warrior ancestors, who had fought against all odds to survive. He also lived and breathed in the monster hunter culture that Nazumah had grown and thrived by. This instilled a mantra of bravery, resistance, and strength within K'Sante, and he vowed to be the greatest warrior the city had ever known. Through years of training, K'Sante would become a very powerful warrior. He would get to flex his skills upon some of the hunts that would be routinely taken by Nazuman warriors. On these hunts, he found a partner, an eventual lover, in a man called Tope. Tope could match K'Sante's skills in battle, and also keep him and his hot-headedness in check. However, K'Sante and Tope were yet to meet their match. One of Xerath's creations, the Cobra Lion, was built as a weapon to fight against the mighty Vizier. The beast had strayed away to Nazumah and was ravaging a nearby savannah. Naturally, K'Sante and Tope took the task of defeating the monster, but to their surprise they were unable to defeat it. Time and time again, the duo tried to take it down, with K'Sante believing the strength was the answer, and Tope trying to strategize a way to get through the monster's armour. This fight broke K'Sante. Through his arrogance and determination to defeat the monster, it blindsided him to rational thoughts. He began to blame Tope for the consistent failure, and they eventually parted ways. For a year, K'Sante trained to fight the beast, and still, nothing came of it. It wasn't until K'Sante turned to Tope once again for guidance that he realised that Tope had gone back to Marabmark, where he was originally from. What remained in Tope's place, however, were the strategies he had devised to defeat the monster. K'Sante realised his mistake. Had he listened to the advice of Tope, perhaps things could have been different. K'Sante pored over Tope's diary, and came to realise that the beast he was fighting was a Bakai, a failed and twisted Ascended. K'Sante would train using Tope's strategies, and eventually found himself ready to take on the Cobra Lion once again. During this time, he realised he had lost sight of his true purpose, and had been led astray by his own pride. In a gruelling battle, using Tope's strategies, K'Sante would topple the beast. K'Sante was not proud of his fight against the beast, but proud of his journey he had undertaken to tackle his demons. After dragging the beast back to Nazumah in order for it to be studied by the city, scientists would deliver K'Sante the Natofos, his dual weapons, crafted from the armour of the Cobra Lion. They served as a reminder of his journey, and a reminder to never let pride overtake him again. K'Sante's story and his arc is fantastic, and in my opinion he is an excellent character added to the universe in League. It also shows us how the people of Shurima are responding to the ongoing fight between Xia, Xerath and their followers. I'm looking forward to trying out K'Sante, but I've heard mixed opinions from the community, so I'd love to hear what you think of his character, either gameplay or lore wise. So feel free to do so in the comments below. However, what I believe the most important reveal in K'Sante's lore comes not from his personal story, but the lore he received around his home, the city-state of Nazumah. But first, in order to understand why Nazumah feels significant, you need to understand the current state of the continent Shurima, which I'll try and summarise. Shurima is in a bit of a weird spot right now. Without a specific ruler since the fall of the Empire thousands of years ago, Shurima feels very split and was slow to be developed by Riot. Shurima consists of a lot of independent groups, and none of them are really vying for power except Azir and Xerath. However, in recent years, Riot's been trying to flesh out the continent by adding a bunch of new locations and factions to the area. The problem is that we're not really aware of how much of a force these individual groups are though. Because there's not been much interaction between them, it's hard to gauge the strength of the different factions. The two main groups within Shurima are Xerath's faction in Neremazeth, which is the ancient capital of Shurima, and Azir's faction, which after the Legends of Runeterra expansion, we now know he's been able to raise some following, and it does seem fairly sizable. Xerath is certainly the bad guy in all of this, but Azir doesn't really feel like a good path either. Azir is not a bad person, but he doesn't fit with the current landscape of Shurima after being resurrected. Azir is a living relic of a bygone era, and is living in the past. As Talia says to Azir in Legends of Runeterra, the continent has moved on from the rule of an emperor. She even suggests to him that he ought to move on too. Even his own descendant Sivir isn't really that bothered about his quest for power. We then have lots of other groups and cities that are within Shurima. There's Talia's tribe, the Nasaj, whom she does not travel with but are definitely a sizable group. Then there's also a bunch of cities throughout Shurima. There are some in the north who are Noxus controlled like Belzun and Uzuris. Then you have the Nashramai, whose people worship Rammus. Akshan's home, Vekora, which was destroyed by Zerath, and then there's a massive part of Shurima that's now being controlled by the Void. Then we are left with Nazumah. Through conflict between the Ascended, the remains of society from the Darkened War, and the ever-growing threat to the Void, it seems like Nazumah has been able to rise above it all. Unlike a lot of factions mentioned within Shurima, they are well established and have been around for a long time. Riot doesn't have their facts completely straight with this. Cassante's Champion Insight post mentions that the city has been around for 500 years, but this is way after the Dark and the Ascended were fighting, so it's hard to say. Regardless, Nazumah is a democratic city-state situated around an oasis on the southern edge of the Shurima continent. It's the first democratic state that we know of within runeterra, which is actually kind of a big deal. It shows that at least politically they're a very progressive society. This notion of progress is supported by Cassante's bio, which tells us of the scientists that helped to forge Cassante's Atofus out of the Cobra Lion's husk. Because of Nazumah's history, it tells us that they're also a melting pot of different cultures and races, as many refugees from all over would come to settle within the city throughout its lifetime. Despite this, the city feels unified and thriving. Although historically Nazumah relied on monster hunting to survive, the city has moved on from this defining its culture. In modern Nazumah, monster hunting has become one of the things that allows Nazumah to thrive. Riot drew parallels between Olympic athletes in society to the way that Nazuman people idolise their monster hunters. Although their feats are achievable by anyone, it takes a gift or decades of training to get to that higher level. Because of this, it feels as though Nazumah will be a major player within Shurima, and potentially even runeterra as a whole. When we compare the city to other factions and locations I mentioned earlier, Nazumah stands out for a few reasons. Nazumah contrasts a lot of what we thought we knew about Shurima. Prior to Nazumah, many assumed that the remaining Shuriman people who weren't controlled by Noxus were spread thin throughout nomadic tribes and smaller trader towns. Nazumah shows us that society can still flourish in Shurima despite the hardships of the desert land. Another point is that unlike many other locations within Shurima, Nazumah already feels well established. We know of their culture, their strength, their technological abilities, and their politics. Again, this completely contrasts what we know of the other Shuriman factions, who in all fairness we knew very little of anyway. Then finally we have Cassante. To the audience, Cassante is the face of Nazumah. The pride of Nazumah, if you will. We know his tale, and we know the journey the man undertook to flourish into the figurehead that he is now for the city. He feels like the perfect character for the player to interact with in an MMO. It's for all these reasons that I believe Nazumah will be a significant location in Riot's upcoming MMO. Although speculation, I believe there's a good chance that it will be a starting zone, potential spawn for one of the classes or races within runeterra. We don't yet know how Riot plans to do new player experience, but if they go down the route of different spawns for different races or classes, akin to the systems in World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, then I could definitely see Nazumah being one of these spawns for a hunter class or even a Shuriman race. I plan to make a video on my thoughts on the character starting experience in the upcoming Riot MMO, and why I think that the best fit for the world of runeterra would be class-based starting locations, so subscribe to make sure that you don't miss that. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.